Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Enlightenment Through Understanding and Wisdom with your host, Jacob Strong. How's everybody doing today? I know it's kind of awesome that I'm getting back into the mood again and really wanting to share everything that is coming my way. So anyway, sorry, I'm noticing that the Wi-Fi dropped out there for a minute, so hopefully it didn't drop out for any of y'all. Anyway, so I wanted to discuss in today's show, when is enough enough? And why is enough enough? And for what reason would we benefit from saying enough is enough? So of course today we're going to be studying a little bit from this Beverly Engel. She's a world-renowned psychologist, and again, I'm going to use my marriage as an example because a lot of people they can't apply the information that they read in a book to their life. And let me tell you, I was the worst on that as well. Many years ago, I could read a book, I could take information in, but I didn't know how to apply it to my own personal life. And so that's why a lot of times you will hear me reference my marriage and my emotionally, physically abusive ex wife so that you know what that looks like. Because again, I can really empathize with everyone who looked in from the outside at my relationship with my ex wife and said, tit for tat. You both, were involved. Because most people are not trained psychologists. They don't understand reactive abuse. They don't understand all these things. But when you're in the moment, when is enough enough? So, we're going to point out a few pointers here from the book, The Emotionally Abusive Relationship, second edition, by Beverly Engel. She says the first sign when you definitely need to leave is if your children are being emotionally, physically, or sexually abused by your partner. So, again, that's why I left my ex. As I've mentioned before, um, my ex refused to feed my son. Um, she refused to give him any sort of emotional support, refused to be a part of his life. And to the point that she was allowing him to chew on TV remote batteries. Now, folks, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, this is crazy. She's so busy on her cell phone that she just emotionally neglects my son to the point that he's chewing on batteries. Now, I don't know if all know what battery acid does to an infant's stomach, but it eats the lining out of their stomach. And if they swallow like a button battery, it kills them because the battery acid eats them from the inside out. Now, this is a woman who's clearly negligent, clearly doesn't want to be a part of me or my son's life. But she is clearly using him for propaganda. She's using him for control. She's using him for money. And of course, that's all she uses him for. And of course, the legal system doesn't address any of that. But anyway, that's another topic for another time. So staying on topic, if the child is being emotionally, physically, or sexually abused by your partner. So emotional abuse is often included emotional neglect as well. Um, Domineering, controlling, critical, rejecting. All of these are signs of an abusive partner. So, of course, in my relationship, um, the emotional abuse was prevalent. The physical abuse of my son by my ex-wife started after we separated. And so I picked up my son one time and he had the muscle ripped off his right leg. And of course, the ER doctor flat said that no injury like this could occur from him falling from his own body height. Of course, my ex argued that point. Nonetheless, that's where the physical abuse started for my son, was after we separated. So as you can see, with this individual, it kept getting worse. Sign number 2, when you definitely need to leave the abusive relationship, is if you are emotionally, physically, or sexually abusing your child. So if you recognize that you are doing this to your child, you should walk away. Good luck getting a narcissist to do that. Because again, it's never about the child. It never was about the child. It never was about the family. It was about the control that they could exert over the family. It was about seeking their supply and getting it. So we can rule that out, since this program pretty much is specifically talking about how to recognize it from a victim standpoint. But again, this is in her book, so I just wanted to share that with you all, so that you could see what what that would look like. Sign number 3 is if you are afraid you are going to abuse your children. Again, since we are talking specifically about narcissists and their need for supply, a narcissist will never admit any fault. So they don't take any responsibility. They've never made a mistake in their life. And so that's, doesn't really apply to what we are talking about here on this program either. However, like I said, it's in her book, and I can appreciate the fact that she is trying to bring awareness to these situations, even from the narcissist, to the narcissist. Though most narcissists will not read a self-help book because they already know it all, right? Number 4, and this one does apply to my case, does apply to me, is if your children are being damaged by the emotional abuse between you and your partner. Now, my son witnessed on multiple occasions my ex-wife raising her voice, yelling and screaming, being belligerent, being disrespectful, being rude, being inconsiderate. And so that is something that that is another obvious sign that you should leave. You should leave the relationship. The children should not witness that, because if you allow it, then they think that it's okay as well. If your partner, number 5, if your partner is physically abusing you or is threatening to do so. Now, this should go without saying, but unless you've lived in a narcissistic relationship, It's so difficult to leave after the physical abuse has started or after the threat has been made. And the reason that it's so difficult is because this is why predominantly women do fall into this category, but men can as well. And let me tell you why. Some men and some women do not want to fight. They do not want to have to be put in that position to kill. And so when a threat is made, now deep down in their unconscious mind, they have to make the decision of fight or flight. But they can't choose either because they don't want to flee because they believe that the threat is substantial. They believe that that the threat carries merit. And so they stay. And this one is a tough one because particularly with couples or heterosexual couples, or even same-sex couples, because especially if you have children, because now you want to protect those children, especially when you have a protector mindset. And so oftentimes you stay well past what you should not stay. And this is, and this one's a tough one because getting help from anyone on the outside that can relate, that can empathize with you is very difficult. And of course, calling law enforcement does not help because they're just there to enforce law. They do not care about justice. There is no such thing as justice in the DOJ. We've concluded that numerous times. But anyways, so with that being said, that is the toughest one that I say. Um, Speaking from a victim, being a victim of my dad as well as my ex-wife, narcissistic abuse, it's tough. It's very tough. And then especially once you had a child together, then you wanted to stay to protect that child, and you tried everything that you could to protect that child. And of course, this is what most people do not understand. They're like, well, if your spouse hits you, then leave. But if the threat is credible, if the threat carries merit, if the threat carries weight, or if the action carries merit, or if the action carries weight, then you do everything you can to um, to avoid that. But let me tell you, it only gets worse. The violence only gets worse. The threats only get bigger, more exaggerated. But at the end of the day, a narcissist, a narcissist's goal is to look like this perfect little angel to society. So remember this, even if they punch you, even if they kick you, even doesn't matter what they do, even if they make the threat, I'll kill you or I'll kill your kids, they won't actually follow through for one reason, because they want to make themselves look like top citizens to society. They want to make themselves look so good to society. So, if y'all are listening to this podcast and you're in fear of life for leaving, and you've listened through all my podcasts and you've determined that you are a victim of a narcissist, I'm here to tell you that narcissist is not going to touch a hair on your head after you've left for that reason, because it's all about their image. It's all about, look at me, I'm so good, I'm so perfect. And so So yeah, so diving into the psychological aspect of that, um, that's that's you know that's where that's at. So anyway, so number 6, if you have reached a point where you are becoming physically abusive. So again, we've touched on this because obviously I did this as well. It's called reactive abuse. And when you're pushed into a corner and you have no place to turn, no place for help, no place to go, you have no longer a fight or flight response. You only have a fight response because there's nothing else left to do. You can no longer flee, so you have to fight. And looking back at it, that's exactly what happened with me after we got married because my ex started using her narcissistic, manipulative tactics more and more on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. There was no peace in the house. There was yelling and screaming. There was all of this and that because she, is a narcissist. And so with that being said, if you notice yourself reacting badly to them, then if you continue to go down that path, there is a very good possibility you could take it too far and you could end them. And mind you, that probably wouldn't be a bad thing in some cases, but um, does it do any good? No, probably not. Because it doesn't further society anymore. It doesn't bring any understanding to this mental condition, the human condition of narcissism. And of course, that's what we want to try to do as empaths. We want to try and stop the cycle of abuse by bringing awareness to this situation. And so, all of you who have made it to my podcast to listen, then it's obvious that you are trying to bring awareness to the situation without using excessive force. So, number 7, if you have begun to fantasize about harming or killing your partner. Yeah, that's I've never did that. I've never done that at all. But I tell you what, going through the federal prison system, I met a lot of guys who looked at me and just said, "Why didn't you?" And of course, my only thought was, I love my mother very much. I wouldn't want my son to know that number one, his dad took his mom away from him. And number two, how's he going to get to ever believe me unless he's seen it with his own eyes? And so that's why I was hoping to, have him grow up without her and then see her as an adult. And then he could see what kind of um, person that this woman is. Of course, that didn't happen, which we've covered that in the past. But anyways, so yes, if you're considering harming or killing your partner, then stop, take a breather, and realize, go back to the number 5 when I said that your partner, you know, even if they've made the threat, even if they've gotten physical with you, don't worry, they're narcissists. As long as you've determined that they are a narcissist and don't have some other mental condition, then you don't have to worry. They're not going to, they're not going to risk tainting their glorious reputation amongst the community members to do so. So anyway, number 8, if you are seriously questioning your sanity. Boy, let me tell you, I did that all the time. My ex, I was like, I know I did not just say that. And then she'd be like, "That's exactly what you said." And it's like, I know I didn't. I mean, and then you start questioning, like, am I going insane? Like, what am I saying? What am I hearing? Am I even hearing myself properly? And so, that's another way for you to determine whether it's time for you to exit, because you don't want to end up in the loony bin, because that doesn't do your child or anyone else any good. So get out of that situation um, before you've come to, the end of the road, put near the end of the road to where you're questioning your own sanity. And last but not least, if it has become clear to you that your partner does not respect you. And again, that should have been a clear sign for me, because there were so many times that I would ask my ex-wife to come up with a schedule so that we could have family time together. Because she always wanted to go to her parents' house on the weekends, which is, of course, when I took my time off. Mind you, I was self-employed. So I was willing to work weekends and take time off during the week, but I needed consistency in order to schedule my jobs, schedule stuff. And so she never wanted to do that. So that in itself, even before we had children, even before we were married, should have been a very obvious sign that this individual has no respect for what you are doing for them. They have no respect for the home that you have given them. They have no respect for anything that you are providing them. And so, because they're a narcissist, all that you are there for is, like in my ex-wife's case, I was just a paycheck for her. I was nothing more. I was not a husband. I was not a boyfriend. I was not anything to her except a paycheck. And so, thus, there was no family time. There was never anything that she ever wanted to do, because there was no reason for it. In her mind, there was no reason for any of that. And so that you can usually identify, actually, even though it's last but not least, early on in a relationship. If you're dating someone, or if you're either in a professional or romantic or acquaintanceship relationship or friendship, if they're not respecting you or not respecting your boundaries, then they have no place for you in their lives, and thus you shouldn't have any place for them in your life either. So anyway, yeah, I just felt like saying that, and I just wanted to say that and get that out there. So y'all have a good night and have a good Monday night. And unless I come up with something sooner, we'll talk to you all on Sunday. And you all have a good weekend. And I appreciate all of you who have listened um, and are supporting me. I really appreciate you. So thank you very much. Have a good